Hi, I'm Toni. Welcome to So Lounge. Today I'm going to show you how to lay out your pattern on a border print. Now, a border print is just what you imagine it to be. It is a printed fabric that has a very large border on one side or both sides. Now, this is a Japanese fabric that I bought at a really cool shop in Smithville, Texas called Leonine Textiles. And I wanted a border print because I wanted to make a wrap skirt. Now, the pattern I originally had for my wrap skirt is out of print, and it wasn't a real wrap skirt, it was more of a faux wrap skirt, which is not what I was looking for. But I did find a new in print, so y'all can go out and get this, Simplicity 8133. It is a Learn Basic Skills. It's by the American Sewing Guild, so there's really detailed instructions inside if you want to make this pattern. It's not 100% a real wrap skirt, so I'm going to be adjusting it a little bit, but that's the base that I'm working with, and Clementine has decided to be my pattern paperweight. So to get started, make sure that your fabric is washed and ironed and on grain. If you don't know how to get your fabric on grain, I made a video about that, so go check it out and then come back to this point. So because this is a border print, the fabric is folded flat, so we have the selvage on each side. So the selvage is up here and at the bottom. And then I tore this raw edge to get it on grain. And this is the edge I'm going to use to measure my pattern piece grain line. So let's get started. Before you're ready to lay out your pattern pieces, obviously you need to cut them out. So make sure that they are cut out and pressed flat so they don't have any major wrinkles or folds in them. And then we're going to start the layout process. Now, the instructions for layout in the pattern are for regular fabric, either with or without nap, and 45 or 60 inches wide. Now, because this is a border print, I want to make sure that all of the pattern with the border is going around the bottom of the skirt, so I need to lay things out a little bit differently. And because this is a wrap skirt, it doesn't really matter to me like what the inside waistband looks like or what the ties look like as much, because the main focus of this garment is going to be the pattern on the actual skirt itself. So this fabric is about 43 inches wide. So it's going to be a really tight squeeze to get everything into it. And thankfully there's going to be a little bit of an edge at the top that I can use for hopefully the waistband and ties. We'll see. But I'm going to lay out the bulk of the pattern pieces, the very large skirt, front, back, and each side. So it's right side, left side, back. The back has to be cut on the fold, so we're going to do that towards the end. And we are going to get started with the first piece. So let's go in for a closer look. So I am starting with the right front pattern piece. I have it face up, so I know what the front of the skirt is going to look like. And because this is 43 inches wide, and we're doing a border print, and I'm not following the layout, we want to maximize the amount of fabric to use for all the pattern pieces as much as possible. So I'm going to pull this piece down into the selvage area, which is totally fine with this kind of a project because it is just a wrap skirt, and this is where we're going to finish the hem anyway. Plus, I want to try and maximize the top border for the waistband and the ties. Fingers crossed we have enough fabric. Otherwise, we'll have to go with a contrasting fabric, which is also totally fine. So let's start by measuring the grain. And that is 12.5. So to measure the grain, to make sure our pattern piece is on grain, we are using the widthwise grain, which goes across the width between the two selvages. Most of the time when we make garments, we are making them on the lengthwise grain, which is going the other direction when you match the two selvages together. But because we have a border print, we are making an exception. The only difference is going to be that it's probably going to stretch out a little bit longer because the widthwise grain tends to stretch a little bit more than the lengthwise grain. So we could get a little bit longer skirt at the end, which is also fine because it's a wrap skirt and it's a long skirt. So that's kind of the look anyway. Now we're going to go up to the top part of the arrow for the grain. and measure over 12.5. So I need to scoot that over a little bit. And that is 12.5. So I'm going to put a pin in, and then I'm just going to smooth my pattern out and make sure that it lies nice and even everywhere, so that we can go on to the next pattern piece. One other thing to note is these little side notch arrows, which we will be matching up to the back panel, are in this blue dotted area of the fabric. We want to make sure that when we get to the back pattern that this is matched up in the same area and with the other side seam. Clementine has decided to come help. And we are going to have that band going around the top of the skirt. So just something to keep in mind as you are laying out your pattern pieces. Of course, if you are using plain fabric that doesn't have a design on it, or you're not using a border print, so you're following the layout of the pattern, then you don't have to worry about it quite so much. But just as a thought, when you match the side notches to any print, once you sew things together, they will match back up. So that's kind of a helpful hint. Last pin on this side, and then we are going to move to the next piece. Next piece is the left front piece, and so these two pieces, when it's finally put together, will be overlapping with the center line here, as you can see up here. So that's basically what the skirt's going to look like. We kind of just want to get it as even as possible, so the border kind of goes around evenly on all sides and all the pieces. And so now we're going to do the exact same process, except we are going to measure from the second pattern piece over to the grain line, which is 32.5. I'm going to put a pin in. And just like before, we're keeping the bottom of this pattern piece along this edge. I need to scoot it up just a tiny bit because it's a little bit close. There we go. Let me just make sure that it's still at 32.5, since that's my measuring point. Yes. Now we're going to go to the other side and check to make sure that is at the right spot. And we've got to move this over a little bit. A tiny bit more. And that's at 32.5 as well. So I am going to walk back around the table and put in a pin. Now it's totally fine if your pattern pieces are very close to each other, just as long as they're not overlapping. So there's going to be like pretty much no space between those two, but that is fine because they're not overlapping. So I'm just going to put in some more pins to hold everything in place, because the next thing we're going to do is fold the last piece of fabric to cut the back pattern piece, which has to be cut on the fold. And I'm going to kind of fold this fabric onto itself, or the fabric and pattern pieces. And I want to make sure that nothing gets out of place. So better to just pin this all now and then not have to worry about it later. One more pin. So let's keep going. I've folded over the right and left front onto itself, so we're holding that in place. And then we are going to fold this last piece of fabric in half. So this is the last remaining part of the yardage. And we're going to fold that in half, matching up the selvage. And then we're going to lay the pattern piece on top of it. And it's going right side down because we want the grain to be on the fold line. And we then want it to be able to all match up. So we've got to flip the pattern piece over. And we are going to line up this side of the pattern on the fold, because that is what the pattern markings indicate. Just like the other patterns, we want to make sure it is kind of scooched down towards the bottom of the selvage so that we can maximize our fabric usage again. And then the little notch, we want that to be in the blue dot so that this pattern of these dots go around the entire top of the skirt. So I am just going to pin these down and hold them in place, and then we'll start cutting everything out. And And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that it lines up on the edge of the fold. So just press your fabric down as you're pinning and move over your fabric, your pattern as you need to, so that everything lines up really well, because you don't want extra fabric in there. With this pattern, it's not going to make a difference because it is a wrap skirt, so it's going to be forgiving, and that's kind of the whole point of making it. But just make sure you do that, because sometimes if you have like a center back seam and you, or center front seam, you put in some extra, just a little bit of fabric, then things don't hang right. But with this, we're not going to stress. So just finish pinning everything down. Go up to that top edge over there. Tight squeeze over here. And let me actually unpin that and scoot this over a tiny bit. There we go. Keeping everything smooth. We're going to put in a pin here to hold that in place, and here. And now everything's ready, so we're going to go cut it all out. So all of my pattern pieces are cut out, and we are left with these very scrappy pieces. And now comes the moment of truth. Yes, I have enough space to cut out the waistbands and the ties. So to do this, with this print, I have folded the selvages and matched them up along that side. And then on the top side, I have matched up the two torn grain lines from either end of the fabric yardage, and we're just going to get those all lined up. Now, the ties are going to be placed on the lengthwise grain, because that is going to go along with the selvage. So the selvage is going to overlap a little bit. Totally fine. Once again, they're ties. They're not going to affect the drape or the hang of the design. So we're going to put those on the lengthwise grain and put them up to the selvage. And I'm actually going to just pull this up a little bit, because there's a little bit of a design here that looks pretty, and I'd like to get that in. And I am just going to pin along this grain line that's printed on the pattern, and then get everything lined up and put a pin down here at the bottom. So that piece is ready to go. We have it folded because we have to cut 2 of each of these pieces. So it's the front, each side of the tie, and then each side of the waistband. So for the waistband, we are going to be cutting those on the lengthwise grain, which is fine because it's a waistband. So I am going to lay them out, and I'm not sure how much of this is going to be showing, so I want to make sure I get some of that design in, because it looks pretty. And this piece is going under this band, so I'm going to need to scoot the band back over where it was and maybe forfeit a little bit of that design. Maybe we'll leave the band and just kind of put it up there for now, and then I'll move it later once we have these 2 waistbands where they need to be. So we're just going to line them all up, and I need to just put a pin in here, and I'm just going to check and see what that length is to this side, which is the fold. So that's 9. And sometimes when I have a shorter piece like this, what I like to do is draw a line on it with a pen to the top and the bottom. And then that way you can make sure that both ends, when it's a smaller piece like this, are all matched up. So let's just make sure it's 9 on both ends. Okay. And you can just move the piece accordingly. It's 9 at the bottom. And it's about 9 at the top. So that's a good spot. I'm going to put some more pins into the sides just to make it easier to cut out. And then we will move on to the back waistband. So this is the left front waistband, and we're going to pretty much be doing the same thing. We want to make sure that we have the pattern of the fabric on the pattern piece, and we want to make sure that nothing is overlapping with any of the other pattern pieces. So that looks pretty good right there. Let's just measure and make doubly sure that it's in the right spot. So for this one, we are measuring over to this side, which is 11.5. 11.5, that is good. And then we're just going to pin each of the ends of the pattern piece to the fabric so nothing moves, and then we're going to go back in and pin the tie, and now we can move it where we want it to be. Okay, so that looks good. That's up against the edge of the selvage, which we are going to consider the grain line, so I don't need to measure it. But we can, just for kicks, to make sure it's lined up still. Okay, so from the edge to there is about, it's 2 inches. And 2 inches. Smooth it all down. It's all good. We've got it pinned in place. Last pin down here at the bottom. And now we're ready to cut out these pieces. So now you know how to lay out your pattern pieces when you're using a border print. Now, a border print is one of those ways that you can take a basic design and really kick it up a notch and make it look really, really fancy just by your choice of fabric and the know-how to lay out your pattern to make the most of it. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to click like below and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a stitch. And if you've got questions but no one to answer them, head on over to Let's Talk Sewing for Beginners, hosted by Sew Lounge. It's an interactive Facebook group where you can ask all the questions you want and I will get you some answers. I go live in the group on Wednesdays, so check the schedule for the next event. Until we meet again, happy sewing!